The knife was halfway through the glazed ham when he said it. "How's that $2 million house I bought you two doing?" Grandpa didn't even look up from his plate, just dropped it casually between bites of roast carrots, as if he were asking about the weather. My hand froze mid-slice. The room turned to ice. The chatter, my cousin ranting about his Tesla, my aunt griping about flights, cut off mid-sentence like someone pulled the plug. I looked up. "Grandpa, I don't own a house." My voice didn't crack. It didn't need to. The silence that followed did all the screaming for me. My wife, sitting to my right, went still. No twitch, no blink. Just still. My mother, across from me, jerked slightly and knocked her wine glass against her dinner plate. A soft clink. That was it. But it sounded like a gunshot. Across the table, my father cleared his throat like he had something to say, then thought better of it. My younger sister reached for the potatoes, pretending she hadn't just witnessed a live grenade roll into the center of the table. Grandpa looked up then, slowly, first at me, then to his left, where my mother sat, then to my wife. His fork didn't move. His eyes did. My grandfather is not a man who wastes words. He built a logistics empire from scratch in the 70s, survived 2 recessions, and a hostile board takeover. He's not warm. He's not cuddly. But when he gives big. And if you lie to him, you better lie well. Nobody lied out loud. But in that room, the silence was screaming. "You're joking," Grandpa said. I shook my head. "We rent. Always have." My wife finally blinked. She gave a tight smile like I'd just said something mildly embarrassing at a cocktail party. "He's just being dramatic. I'm not," I interrupted. Her lips pressed into a line. And that's when I knew. Not suspected. Not wondered. Knew. Something was deeply wrong. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at her again. I just sat back in my chair, hands on my lap, eyes on my grandfather. There was a war happening in that room, but only 3 people knew they were in it. Me, my wife, and my mother. My father sat back, chewing like nothing had happened. That was his specialty. Never hear what you don't want to deal with. If you're new here, take a second to follow this channel. Most people listening aren't subscribed yet, and you hitting that button? That's what keeps our team fueled to keep dropping these wild, true stories. Grandpa wiped his mouth slowly with his napkin and stood. "Excuse me." He didn't slam the chair. He didn't curse. Just walked out of the dining room, steps steady. The man's 79 and moves like he still runs the floor at his warehouses. The door to his study clicked closed a moment later. The clink of silverware resumed slowly. Nervous bites. Shallow breathing. Someone whispered, "Well, that was awkward," and got a kick under the table, probably from their spouse. I didn't need another bite. I just watched my wife. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Not once. After dessert, she walked up beside me in the hall and whispered, "You made that a lot worse than it had to be." I turned. By telling the truth? Her smile was tight. "You could have waited until later." "Oh, I'm sorry. Should I have RSVP'd to my own humiliation?" She said nothing, just turned and walked away. In the guest bedroom that night, I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The weird delays when we tried to buy. The way she pushed for that particular house, insisted it wasn't quite right yet. The long talks between her and my mom when they thought I wasn't paying attention. The constant, "maybe next year," anytime I mentioned saving for a place of our own. I pulled out my phone, searched the county property database, but the site needed in-person verification for ownership records. Figures. I'd have to wait until morning. I rolled onto my side. My wife was down the hall, already asleep, or pretending to be. I wasn't just missing a house. I was missing the story behind it. And something told me it wasn't just a funny paperwork error. It was intentional and big. Because if Grandpa gave us a house, he didn't offer it. He did it. So where did the house go? And how many people smiled at me while hiding that answer? I didn't want revenge yet. Not even anger. Just one thing, truth. And maybe, if I played this right, I wouldn't be the one left out in the cold when this whole house of cards collapsed. It was close to midnight when I finally slipped out the front door, careful not to let the old brass handle click shut behind me. I wasn't sneaking out. I just didn't want anyone following. The snow had started again, soft flakes landing on my jacket as I stepped off the porch and onto the sidewalk. The neighborhood was dead quiet, save for the occasional wind chime rattling like a whisper warning me to turn around. I didn't bring gloves. I didn't care. The cold bit at my fingers, but it kept me grounded. Real. Everything inside that house felt like a set. Christmas lights too perfect, fake laughter, my own family dressed like a catalog page, and hiding God knows what under the tree skirt. Outside, at least, I could think. She hadn't even tried. "Nada, let me explain. Nada, there's something I should tell you." Just that flat, dismissive line as she pulled the duvet over herself like I was a loud noise she'd grown used to ignoring. Let's talk tomorrow. Talk. About what exactly? How she and my mother had apparently pocketed a $2 million gift and somehow managed to keep it off my radar for over a year. Or maybe we discuss how my name mysteriously never ended up on the title of a house I was supposed to own. Tomorrow. Sure. Like this was a spilled drink. Not a crater left in the middle of my life. I walked past the old neighborhood park, the one with the swing set that hadn't moved in years. The snow sat on it like a warning. Nobody plays fair here anymore. And that's when my brain started stitching things together. The overdue tax documents. The financial aid mix-up 2 years ago. The way my mother kept dodging conversations about future family estate planning by laughing and changing the subject to vacation plans. Little things. Things you don't notice until a bomb goes off and you realize every wire was laid out in plain sight. And then it hit me. So sharp and clear it stopped me in the middle of the sidewalk. 2 years ago, my grandfather had called me from his winter home. He doesn't call unless someone dies or is born. And he said, I wired something. So you two can get settled. Don't argue. I thought he meant a few thousand. A small family boost. I said thank you. He said, it's time you had your own corner of the world. That was 6 weeks before my wife said we found a place we can grow into, but it's too pricey right now. I assumed she meant in the future. She said she was just looking, browsing, but she already had photos saved, knew the floor plan, had furniture bookmarked. Back then, I remember my mom saying, it's so smart of her to keep track of real estate trends. She's always thinking ahead. No, she wasn't thinking ahead. She was executing. And apparently, not alone. I picked up a handful of snow and crushed it in my palm, then let it fall through my fingers. 2 million. That wasn't a soft nudge. That was Grandpa setting us up for life. That was him saying, no more rent. No more scraping. And somehow it bypassed me. No, not somehow. Someone made sure of it. I leaned against a lamppost, cold metal through my coat, and let myself feel it fully. The dread. The pit of your stomach sense that you're the only person in the room who wasn't in on the plan. That your name is a ghost in paperwork you should have signed. That your life, the one you thought you were building, might be a prop in someone else's game. I don't believe in dramatic revenge. I believe in quiet, precise clarity. So I made a decision right there on that street, snow collecting on my shoulders. In the morning, I'd go to the county clerk's office, run the records, not to catch anyone yet, but to see it, to hold it in my hands. Because before I confront anyone, my wife, my parents, I need the facts. Not feelings, not suspicions, just cold, hard proof. The kind of truth that doesn't come from arguments or late night, let's talks. The kind that lives on signatures. And maybe, if I was right about where this was heading, the kind of truth that could blow open more than a stolen house. It might blow open the foundation of my entire family. The next morning, I was the first person through the door at the county registrar's office. The place smelled like dust and coffee breath, and the guy behind the plexiglass didn't bother hiding his boredom. Property records? He asked, already reaching for a clipboard. I nodded and filled out the request slip, keeping my handwriting calm even though my pulse was racing like I'd downed 3 espressos on an empty stomach. I slid the paper back to him. He barely glanced at it before disappearing into a room behind the counter. While I waited, I watched a woman argue over a fence easement and an old man curse about land assessments. Everyone was fighting for space that was supposed to belong to them. I was just trying to find out if I even existed in my own life. 10 minutes later, the man returned and handed me a thin file. You can use that desk over there. I thanked him, walked to the table, and sat. It was quiet. Cold. Fluorescent lights buzzing like static. The first page was a copy of the title deed. Property address, 16, Norwood Lane. Purchase price, $2 million. I stared at the number, then looked again. That was the house. The same one my wife had said was a bit too much for us. The one we toured and she sighed wistfully about. The one she said we'd revisit after a few good bonuses. Except there it was. Bought. Paid. No mortgage listed. A straight wire. And the listed owners? Her name. My mother's name. And my father's. No me. Not as a primary. Not as a cosigner. Not as anything. I wasn't even a blip in the ownership chain. My fingers curled into fists right there on the laminate tabletop. The date of purchase was the gut punch. April 3rd, 18 months ago. Right after our "we'll wait a little longer" conversation. 2 weeks before our lease renewed. I'd asked her, are you sure we shouldn't just go for it? And she'd smiled that soft, patronizing smile and said, let's not rush. Rush? She already had the keys. She'd been living in the plan while I was busy budgeting and dreaming like a damn fool. I flipped to the next page. Legal signatures. Recorded transfers. A record of the wire from Grantham Family Trust. Grandpa's trust. So the money did go through. He didn't forget. He wasn't confused. He'd done exactly what he said he would. It just never made it to me. It was as if someone had held a ceremony to crown me king, and I wasn't even invited to my own coronation. Just given a paper crown and told to sit quietly while the real decisions were being made in private rooms. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Not from panic. From insult. This wasn't just betrayal. This was betrayal dressed in Sunday manners. Fraud with a family crest. The rest of the file confirmed it, a quiet transaction, buried behind layers of legality. But not invisible. No offshore accounts. No shell companies. Just signatures, carefully placed. Like they didn't think I'd ever look. Like they didn't think I could. I sat there for a long time. Not reading. Just watching the ink swirl on paper. Wondering how many quiet lies a person could tell before it rewrote the very core of your marriage. Your childhood. Your place in a family. Why them? Why her and my parents? Why not me? That question burned like acid behind my ribs. And then another thought bloomed. Uglier. Sharper. What else had they done? If they were willing to scrub me out of this, what else had been handled behind closed doors? Birthdays I never remembered? Loans that disappeared? Decisions I thought I made that were actually pre-selected for me like options on a menu I never saw? This wasn't just a financial sleight of hand. It was erasure. Intentional, clean, and legal. I took photos of every page with my phone. Slowly. Precisely. When I stood to leave, the man behind the counter said, "Find what you needed?" I met his eyes. More than I wanted. Outside, the cold slapped me again. But this time I welcomed it. It kept me from boiling over. I didn't call my wife. I didn't call my mother. I just got in the car, turned the heater to low, and drove. Not home. To my office. Because now I wasn't just looking for answers. I was looking for evidence. I sat alone in my office, the lights off, letting the gray winter light spill across my desk. I didn't want warmth. I wanted clarity. Cold, sharp clarity that cut through lies. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I finally opened my email archive. Years of messages. Birthdays. Receipts. Vacation plans. Photos from anniversaries that now looked staged. But I wasn't searching for nostalgia. I was searching for a ghost. Proof that I hadn't imagined Grandpa's old promise. I typed the attorney's name into the search bar. 3 results popped up. My pulse jumped. The middle one was from 2 years ago. Subject line, house gift, irrevocable. Confirmed. I clicked it. The timestamp punched me in the gut. 6 weeks before my wife dragged me to look at the house. 6 weeks before she stood in the foyer, hands clasped, pretending to imagine a life in it she already owned. 6 weeks before she told me, "It's beautiful, but it's too much for us." Someday, though. Someday. She already had the damn deed. The body of the email was short. Legal types don't waste keystrokes. Funds transferred. Title processing underway. Beneficiary notified. My wife's full name. Beneficiary representatives. My mother. My father. Gift is classified as irrevocable and unconditional. No repayment expected. Beneficiary notified. Not beneficiaries. Singular. Her. My throat tightened. I scrolled. Attached was a short PDF. Wire confirmation, transaction ID, a signature from Grandpa's counsel. This wasn't speculation. Not paranoia. Not me filling in blanks. This was documented fact. And the worst part? The CC line. My mother's email sat there like a stain. They all knew. Not one word to me. Not one hint. Not even a breadcrumb. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling like the tiles could answer the question screaming through my skull. Why not tell me? Why cut me out of something meant for me? Why smile at me, hug me, give me advice about saving smart, while already living off a gift in my name? And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The first time my wife mentioned that house, she'd said, "Your mom sent me a listing she thought we'd love." I didn't think anything of it. My mother sends everyone listings. It's her love language, real estate spam. But this one had been different. She had followed up. She had insisted my wife take a look while I worked late one night. They toured it together. Without me. All smiles. All giggles. 2 women bonding over a future they'd already carved out, while the man paying rent like an idiot thought it was just girl time. I opened my old calendar app and scrolled back. There it was. The night they toured. Marked as dinner with mom. She hadn't mentioned the house. Not even casually. My humiliation wasn't theatrical. It was quiet, steady, a a stream of heat crawling up my spine. I wasn't angry at them for wanting the house or using Grandpa's generosity. I was angry because they erased me, stripped me out of my own life like white out on a form. Smiled through it. A sound buzzed from my computer, another email loading. I opened a thread between my wife and mother. Not snooping. These were old emails I was copied on when they were planning a birthday surprise. But among them was one I hadn't noticed back then, buried between spa confirmations and brunch plans. The subject line was labeled property notes. It wasn't a forwarded listing. It wasn't casual. It was deliberate. My mother wrote, "If we process the paperwork correctly, he won't need to sign anything. The trust rules allow it as long as 2 family representatives are present." My wife replied, "Perfect. He hates legal stuff anyway. It'll be easier not to involve him until everything is settled." Easier. Easier. Like I was a toddler who couldn't handle crayons, let alone a deed. My hands shook, not from rage, but from something colder. The realization that this wasn't a slip or oversight. It was a choice, a plan, a coordinated decision to protect me from the one thing that was supposed to change our lives together. Collusion. That's the only word for it. This wasn't just them keeping a secret. This was them deciding I didn't need to know, didn't deserve to know. I closed the laptop gently, because if I slammed it, I might break more than plastic. My humiliation was now something harder, sharper, a blade taking shape inside me. I wasn't going to confront anyone yet. Not angrily, not emotionally. No, I was going to keep digging. Because a house didn't just disappear. And people don't erase a man from his life unless they've gotten away with it before. I made the call from the stairwell at work. Not my office. Not the break room. The stairwell, 5 flights up, where the Wi-Fi barely held but the silence was total. I needed isolation. No pity glances. No small talk. Just raw truth, unfiltered. The number listed on the property documents rang twice before a man picked up. Martin and Reed. This is Thomas Martin. He sounded polished. Comfortable. The kind of voice that lives in glass conference rooms and calls people partner at fundraisers. "Yes, Mr. Martin," I said, my voice flat. "You oversaw the transfer of 16 Norwood Lane 18 months ago?" A pause. "Yes, I did. I'm calling about the waiver. The one with my name on it." Another pause. Slightly longer this time. "You're Mr. Caldwell." "Correct." He cleared his throat. "Well, Mr. Caldwell, that waiver was signed and witnessed. It states you relinquished any claim to the property gifted by your grandfather. I never signed any such thing." Now his pause was deliberate, controlled. "I have the document on file. Send it." He hesitated. "I'll need to confirm your identity." I gave it. Everything. Birth date, last 4 of my social, address, though apparently not my address anymore. 10 minutes later, a new email pinged on my phone. Subject, waiver, property transfer 16, Norwood Lane. Attachment, 1 file, PDF. I opened it. My name was there. My signature, supposedly. But it looked off. It resembled my signature the way a wax figure resembles a celebrity, close enough to fool someone at a glance. But to me, it was a joke. The loops were wrong. The slant was too vertical. I always write my L with a slight curl. This was just a straight line, as if someone dragged it through a touchscreen while praying I'd never look. I stared at it for a full minute. The page blurred, not from tears, those had dried out 2 parts ago, but from sheer, grinding disbelief. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just omission. This was forgery. I called him back. "Mr. Martin," I said, "where exactly did you receive this waiver?" He sounded cautious now. "It was submitted digitally. Through DocuSign. Standard protocol." "Who sent it?" "Your wife. And it was CC'd with your parents. She noted you were traveling. Said she facilitated the paperwork on your behalf. All family trust members approved it." I laughed. Just once. It sounded more like a cough. "Did anyone call me to verify?" "I assumed you were looped in." "Did you hear my voice? Get a recording? A confirmation?" "No. The trust has flexible requirements when 2 family-designated representatives sign off. It's unusual, but not unheard of." "Unheard of," I muttered. "Yeah, that's one way to describe it." "Mr. Caldwell," he said gently, "is there a problem? A forged waiver that removed me from a $2 million asset? You tell me." Silence. Then the shuffle of paper on his end. The sound of a man realizing he just stepped in something rotten. "I'll open a review." "Do that. And one more thing." "Yes. Preserve everything. Audit logs, emails, metadata. If this gets buried, I'll bring fire." Click. I didn't shake. I didn't pace. I didn't scream. I sat back on the stairwell step and looked out the window. My reflection looked tired, worn. But behind my eyes, something was different now. Control. Not over them. Not yet. But over me. See, there's a moment after betrayal where you either break or build. They thought they'd broken me. Instead, they'd sharpened something. If they were willing to forge a signature, bypass a trust intent, and keep me in the dark for 2 full years, then this wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a system. One I'd lived inside for decades, blindfolded and grateful. I opened a blank note on my phone and titled it simply, "What They Took." Underneath, I began to list things. Not material. Not dollars. Moments. Conversations rewritten. Holidays hollowed out. Decisions that weren't mine. Not anymore. I knew what came next. And I'd do it slowly, methodically, with the precision they thought I lacked. Because when your life becomes a document someone else forges, there are only 2 paths left. Let it stand. Or burn it to the ground and write your own. When I got home, the house smelled like rosemary and garlic and effort, her best version of normal. The kind she only breaks out when there's something to hide. The lights were dimmed. Table set. Candles lit. Cloth napkins folded into those little triangle fans she only learned for the holidays. She wore lipstick. That red one she knows I like. Or used to. The dining room looked like a peace offering. Or a stage. She heard the door click and looked up from placing silverware. Smiled. Practiced. It didn't touch her eyes. "You're early," she said, smoothing her dress as if I'd walked in on something private. I walked past her, straight to the table, and placed the paper down like it was a card in a poker game. She looked down. Froze. Like a deer in headlights. Except deer don't usually help build the car that's about to hit them. "Where'd you get this signature?" I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. Her eyes darted. "Document. Me, back again." "What are you talking about?" "This. Right here. The waiver with my name." "Where'd you get it?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She licked her lip, a habit she always had when cornered. "Your mom said, she said you knew. That it was fine. That you didn't want the stress." I didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't speak. She filled the silence herself. "She told me it was part of the trust setup. That you didn't like the paperwork. That it was easier this way." "Easier for who?" I asked quietly. She swallowed. I thought you didn't want to deal with it." "No," I said. "You didn't want me to deal with it." She blinked rapidly. "It's not like that. We were just trying to." "I didn't sign this," I said, tapping the page. She nodded once, then stepped back like the paper had turned radioactive. A long pause. Then she said it. Softly. Pathetically. I didn't know it would be a problem. I looked at her, really looked at her. And it hit me. She wasn't scared of what she'd done. She was scared it didn't stay buried. That the quiet, docile man she thought she'd married had started asking questions. The man who always avoided conflict was suddenly holding evidence. That scared her more than the fraud itself. And that told me everything I needed to know. I picked the paper up slowly, folded it, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then turned and walked upstairs. No yelling. No accusations. No dramatic scenes. Just silence. Because rage is noisy. But clarity? Clarity is silent. She didn't follow. Smart. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, took out my phone, and opened the note I'd started earlier. What they took. Added a line. Autonomy. I thought about every time she'd told me I was too sensitive when I questioned things. Every moment she'd nudged me away from the details. Let me handle it. You just stress yourself out. Trust me. It's already done. It wasn't just the house. It was a pattern. I was a spectator in a marriage where the script had already been written. And I'd been cast as the idiot. I heard her footsteps in the hallway. Then the soft clink of silverware being adjusted again. Rehearsing normal. She still thought this could be fixed with a dinner. She didn't understand. Dinner was the storm, not the shelter. I opened my laptop. Logged into my encrypted drive. Opened a folder titled Trust Documents. I had the original letter Grandpa sent me after that phone call 2 years ago. A scanned copy. Simple. One line in the margin. All in your name. No strings. But someone tied strings anyway. Knotted them around my neck while smiling. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to prepare. Because storms don't warn you when they arrive. But this time, I was going to be the one bringing the thunder. The old estate looked exactly how I remembered it. Wide, looming, untouched by time. The stone columns flanked the frozen steps like sentinels. Grandpa's place didn't try to impress anymore. It had already done that for 5 decades. Now it just existed, quietly powerful, like the man who owned it. He was waiting outside when I pulled up. No gloves. No coat. Just his thick cable-knit sweater and that old brown scarf he wore when things got serious. He didn't wave. just turned and started walking the snow-covered path toward the orchard. I got out and followed. For a long time, neither of us said a word. You don't talk when you're with my grandfather. You wait until he's ready. The orchard was skeletal this time of year. Rows of barren trees. Their limbs stretched skyward like they were pleading for something that never came. Grandpa stopped near the fence, looked out over the field. Finally, he said, "Cold morning." I nodded. "Yeah." He turned, slowly. "How's the house?" That was it. That was the test. The trap. The offer. I stared at him, hands in my coat pockets, and said, "I didn't get the house." His eyes didn't flicker. He didn't say, "What do you mean?" or "Are you sure?" He just waited. So I pulled the folded stack of papers from my jacket, warm from being pressed to my chest for 2 straight days, and handed them over. He took them. No rush. Opened the first page. Read it slowly. Turned to the next. Stared at the forged signature for a long time. Longer than I expected. Like he was memorizing it. Then he folded them all, precise, and handed them back. Still no words. Still no reaction. Just silence. And then, without a sound, he turned and began walking back toward the house. That was the moment I knew. He believed me. Not because I convinced him. Not because I begged. But because he'd already suspected. He just didn't want to face what it meant. I followed him up the steps. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and old paper. The kind of scent that never really leaves. A fire crackled in the hearth, but neither of us sat. He walked to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of something dark into a glass, and handed it to me. No toast. No words. Just an offering. Then he poured one for himself. He stared into the flames for a while, glass untouched. "She was always ambitious," he finally said, voice gravel low. "Mom." He gave me a look. One I hadn't seen since I was 15, and backed the family car into a tree. That wasn't a question. He meant my wife. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He knew. He'd always known. "You want me to handle it?" he asked. The words were soft. Almost gentle. Like a doctor asking if you'd prefer the morphine now or later. I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded. That was it. There would be no lecture. No scolding for not coming to him sooner. Just a shift in the ground beneath my feet. Subtle, quiet, but irreversible. He reached into the drawer beside the fireplace and pulled out a small leather-bound book. Opened it. Scribbled something. "Don't let them rush you," he said, eyes still on the page. Liars always act like the truth is rude. I let the words sit in the air for a beat. Memorized them. Then I turned to leave. He didn't walk me to the door. Didn't need to. Because something had just changed in that room. Something invisible but heavy. The kind of change that doesn't announce itself with noise or fanfare. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I realized something. I wasn't fighting this alone anymore. And the man they all thought was too old to care? He had just quietly chosen a side. Mine. Dinner was at 7. Formal, just like always. Suits, ties, heels, smiles. My mother wore that pearl necklace she only drags out when Grandpa's watching. My wife came in a cream-colored dress, perfectly pressed. She greeted everyone like she hadn't forged my signature and deleted me from my own life. Dad poured wine like it was just another Sunday. My sister was already tipsy. She'd always had a talent for disappearing into a glass when things got tense. But this time, the tension wasn't under the surface. It was the surface. Everyone felt it. Because this wasn't our dinner. This was Grandpa's. And tonight, he was hosting. He sat at the head of the long oak table, back straight, hands folded, that same calm that always made people underestimate how dangerous he could be. The man didn't raise his voice when he fired someone. He just let the silence tell you it was over. Permanently. The room buzzed with nervous laughter, small talk, chewing. Until the toast. He stood slowly, lifted his glass. Everyone followed. "A toast," he said. "To family. And to clarity." We all clinked glasses. Some smiled. I didn't. He held his wine for a moment, didn't drink. Just swirled. Then he said it. Funny thing about gifts. They reveal more about who takes than who gives. Every fork stopped moving. My mother blinked rapidly. My wife tilted her head slightly, the way she does when she's pretending to be curious and not cornered. Dad coughed into his napkin. Then Grandpa reached beneath the table and pulled out a thick manila folder. Unlabeled. Worn. Heavy. He placed it on the table like a judge laying down a verdict. "I was reviewing some property transfers this week," he said casually, still not looking at anyone in particular. "Found one with an interesting waiver. Signature looked delicate." My mother shifted. My wife pressed her lips together. Dad looked at the ceiling like maybe God would offer a distraction. He continued, "You'd be amazed what a man notices when he stops assuming people are telling the truth." Then he slid the folder toward the center of the table. Anyone want to explain this? No one moved. No one even breathed. He finally looked at my mother. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you think I wouldn't care? Her face twitched. She opened her mouth, then closed it. He turned to my wife. Forging someone's name is a choice. Coordinating it with two other people makes it a conspiracy. My wife stayed silent. Her hands were folded too perfectly on the table. She knew better than to speak. She was calculating. Grandpa turned toward the entryway and nodded once. The door opened. A man stepped in, mid-40s, slim black folder in hand, suit tailored, wire-rimmed glasses. Most of you remember Mr. Schultz, Grandpa said. My estate attorney. Now the panic started. My mother let out a quiet, strained, "Dad, we can talk." He cut her off with a raised hand. "We're done talking. Mr. Schultz." The attorney opened the black folder and began reading. Effective immediately, disbursements from the Grantham Trust to the following individuals are suspended pending investigation into fraudulent documentation. Patricia Caldwell, Leonard Caldwell, and, he glanced up, Evelyn Caldwell. My wife's jaw flexed. She didn't look at me. Not once. The property at 16 Norwood Lane is now under temporary legal freeze due to contested ownership and signature fraud. A criminal complaint has been filed and is under review. My mother gasped like she'd been slapped. Dad's wine glass tipped slightly in his hand. My sister? She just stared, wide-eyed, like this was a play and she didn't know her line. I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, because I didn't need to say anything. Grandpa wasn't done. He stepped forward, hand on the back of my chair. Then, finally, he looked directly at me. "You told me the truth. You didn't ask for anything. And you didn't raise your voice." He turned back to the table. "Some of you forgot that silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. Until now." Then he sat down and began cutting his steak. The room stayed frozen for another full minute. Then forks hesitantly moved again. But no one tasted a damn thing. No one asked for seconds. No one smiled. Because the meal wasn't dinner anymore. It was consequence. And dessert was still coming. Monday morning, the attorney's office was sterile and silent, save for the steady tick of the antique clock on the wall. The kind of silence that feels deliberate, surgical, like a room built for uncomfortable truths. We were seated around a polished walnut table that smelled faintly of lemon oil and tension. My grandfather sat at the head, perfectly still. I was to his right. My mother, father, and wife sat across from us, not quite looking at each other. Their movements had that stiff choreography of people who still hoped this was fixable if they just looked sorry enough. It wasn't. Mr. Schultz, the estate attorney, sat with his hands steepled over a thick folder. He had the slow, patient rhythm of a man who delivered news like this before and wasn't in a hurry to soften the impact. "I'll begin with the findings," he said, flipping open the folder. "Following the review of documents submitted for the purchase and titling of 16 Norwood Lane, we've identified inconsistencies surrounding the waiver that removed Mr. Caldwell's name from rightful ownership." He turned a page. "The signature does not match verified samples. Metadata on the digital file indicates it was created and signed from an IP address belonging to Mrs. Caldwell's business office, not Mr. Caldwell's." A slight twitch in my wife's brow. Nothing else. Mr. Schultz continued. "Moreover, statements from two involved parties, namely Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell Sr., acknowledge they did not confirm directly with Mr. Caldwell prior to approving the title documentation. This alone constitutes a breach of the Grantham Trust disbursement agreement." He looked up briefly. My mother started to say something, but stopped. She was good at reading rooms. This one said, "Shut up and listen." "Given these findings," he continued, "the trust disbursement connected to the property is officially frozen. No ownership transfers, no use of the house as collateral, no financial benefit to be extracted by the listed title holders. The property is now under temporary court protection pending a full investigation into the forgery and the attempt to circumvent the trust's terms." Now came the knife. Effective immediately, inheritance disbursement for the following individuals is paused under Section 7C of the Grantham Trust Agreement due to breach of fiduciary ethics and suspected collusion. Patricia Caldwell, Leonard Caldwell, and Evelyn Caldwell. My mother inhaled sharply, eyes wide. Dad shifted in his seat like someone had just cut his salary mid-sentence. My wife didn't react. She just stared at a smudge on the table like it would explain all of this away if she stared long enough. Mr. Schultz closed the folder. "Legal complaints have been filed. Charges may or may not be pursued, depending on full cooperation during the internal audit. But for now, their status in the trust is suspended." They didn't shout. They didn't cry. They did something worse. They went small. I watched them shrink in their chairs. People who once orchestrated every room they walked into, now looking like guests at their own funeral. My mother folded her hands so tightly the knuckles went white. My father stared into the middle distance like the word, paused, meant, we'll fix it later. And my wife, her expression cracked. Not much. Just enough. A tremble at the edge of her mouth. She knew what I knew. Grandpa didn't pause things. He ended them with style. Schultz turned to me. Mr. Caldwell, would you like to make a statement? I looked at them all. These people I used to share holidays with, trust with my future, let make decisions in rooms I didn't know existed. No, I said quietly. I think the paper did the talking. I stood, straightened my coat, looked at Grandpa. He gave a small nod. Nothing dramatic. Just approval. I turned to Schultz. Thank you for your time. And I left. No mic drop. No look back. No dramatic exit. Just the clean, silent cut of a man done letting liars narrate his life. As I stepped into the hallway, I passed a painting I'd seen my whole childhood, an old oil canvas of Grandpa shaking hands with a governor. I used to think that painting was about power. Now I knew better. It was about clarity. Power is what they tried to steal. Clarity is what I had now. And that was everything. 3 weeks passed in near silence. Not one call from my mother. No emails from my father. My wife, soon-to-be ex, moved in with a friend for space, though I suspect the walls started whispering to her the moment her access to trust money evaporated. She left behind most of her things, as if the objects still had some leverage over me. They didn't. I worked, ate, slept, and waited. I wasn't expecting anything else from Grandpa. He'd already done enough. Exposed them, stopped the theft, protected what was mine. But when the envelope came, thick cream cardstock with a wax seal and my full name in his unmistakable block lettering, my hands went still. No return address. Just my name. Inside, 2 sheets. The first, formal legal. Grantham Family Estate Trust. Revised allocation document. At the top, in bold, underlined. All assets shall be divided among those who act with honor. No other qualifiers. No vague language. Just one clean clause. The kind that speaks louder than any speech. The list of beneficiaries had been redrafted. 3 names removed. 1 name remained. Mine. The second sheet was handwritten. Grandpa's penmanship was precise, rigid, like each letter had been chiseled rather than written. You never asked me for anything. That's why you'll have everything. No signature. He didn't need one. The key was tucked inside the fold. Silver. Heavy. Real. Not a copy. Not a metaphor. The original. 16, Norwood Lane. The house they tried to erase me from. The house built on a lie. Now mine. No ceremony. No photos. Just a final truth, handed over with absolute silence. I drove there alone. No bags. No luggage. Just the key in my palm, gripped so tightly the grooves imprinted my skin. The gate was still open. The porch light was still out. The last snowfall had drifted up against the front steps. No one had shoveled. It looked abandoned. It was perfect. I stepped onto the porch. The same boards she and my mother walked across 18 months ago, giggling, planning a life that didn't include me. The lock turned with a click. I opened the door. It smelled of dust and old ambition. Bare floors. Empty walls. A few furniture pieces they hadn't gotten around to moving in. The place felt hollow. But not to me. I stepped inside and stood in the middle of the foyer, breathing in the stillness. This wasn't revenge. Not really. This was reclamation. I didn't win by taking something from them. I won by refusing to be erased. By not begging. By not yelling. By outlasting the lie. I walked room to room. The fireplace where she'd imagined putting a white velvet couch. The study my mother said would be perfect for a reading nook. The kitchen where my father joked about building a wine cellar he'd never use. They made plans without me. Now their plans were just echoes. I reached the master bedroom. Pushed open the door. Light spilled in through sheer curtains they had hung for the aesthetic. I stood there a moment, then reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded note. Placed it on the dresser. You never asked me for anything. That's why you'll have everything. I sat down on the floor, crossed my legs, closed my eyes. I wasn't celebrating. There was no music. No clinking glass. No applause. Just silence. Not the kind they tried to trap me with, but the kind I chose. The war ended without shouting. And I won.